Cell-mediated immune response. Objective: to learn the mechanism of cell-mediated immune response in the elimination of antigen-infected cells. In another session, we described mechanisms of humoral immunity. In this session, we will discuss how T cells recognize and respond to foreign antigens. In the humoral immune response, B cells are crucial. In the cell-mediated immunity, T cells are important. Cell-mediated immunity is an immune response that does not involve antibodies, but involves the activation of macrophages, natural killer cells, antigen-specific cytotoxic T lymphocytes, and the release of various cytokines in response to an antigen. When an infection sets in, a virus will enter the body and will inject its genetic material into a host cell. The genetic material of the virus will produce multiple copies of virus inside the host cell. The protein recycling enzymes, such as lysosomes, will process the antigen and make them into fragments. The fragments of the antigen will combine with class I major histocompatibility complex, MHC proteins, and move to the outer surface of the host cell. Macrophages with antigen fragments on the outer surfaces are referred to as antigen-presenting cells. Another cell, the T helper cell or Th, will recognize the antigen particles on the macrophage and then become activated. The receptors on the Th cell will bind to the MHC protein and the antigen particles present inside it. After binding, the host cell will release the chemical cytokine interleukin-1, which will stimulate T helper cells, causing them to release interleukin-2. The release of interleukin-2 will stimulate the cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells will proliferate and move around looking for other infected cells. When an infected cell that has the antigen along with the class I MHC receptor is found, the cytotoxic T cell receptors bind to the MHC proteins. After binding, the cytotoxic T cells will release spore-forming molecules called perforin. The perforin molecules will bore holes into the infected cell membrane and destroying the virus within the cell as well. Summary: the cell-mediated immune response is an immunologic response that is mediated by cytotoxic T cells. Interleukins secreted by T helper cells will stimulate cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells will recognize infected cells and release spore-forming molecules called perforin to destroy the infected cell.